Welcome, my friends, to the showdown between Norsca, who shall be led by THROGG the Troll King, and the Vampire Counts, who are going to be led by a THROGG Vampire Lord. So no, it's not going to be the King. Although, do they have different tooltips? I'm pretty sure they have different portraits up there. But anyways, it's just going to be a standard THROGG Vampire Lord. So as far as my army goes, here in the front line, it's going to be a combination of Marauder Champions and Berserkers. So whenever you're facing off against, well, not all undead factions, but Vampire Counts specifically, I think having durability in the front line is going to be super important. Oftentimes, I found that against Vampire Counts, if you go with Marauders or kind of low leadership units, they get pushed off, the Mortis Engine terrifies them, there's just so many variables that can go wrong for them. As such, I feel like having durability in the front line is super important. So in total, we have 3 champions, and these guys do a pretty good job. They're very, very tanky. They have 80 armor, 53 melee defense, and pretty good offensive stats, despite being very good defensively. 36 and 39 is certainly not bad for the cost. More importantly, though, the longer they fight against the vampires, and it's often a pretty grindy fight, they're going to be getting bonus leadership, physical resistance, and eventually melee attack, which is quite strong due to their rage mechanic. So 2 Berserkers in the front line are going to give a little bit more punch. Obviously, these guys are the lawnmowers, and the champions are kind of just there to hold things in place. But it's going to be good against vampires. Often you're going to see a ton of chaff, and then monstrous units, blood knights, terror guys, things like that in this matchup. So having these guys to kind of hold the line and just grind down the chaff, and eventually, you know, I think these are just standard Graveguard. Yeah, it's just going to be basic Graveguard. So for the most part, it's going to be a good matchup for the champions in the front line, as I'm pretty sure Marauder champions, actually, that's something to test. I wonder if they would beat Graveguard head-to-head. I feel like they would. I mean, 7,200 HP, 7.3 on these guys. The stats are a lot lower on the Graveguard, but they do have that bonus versus infantry, so there's something to be said there. So in the back here, we have a couple Javelins. Javelins, as you would probably guess, are there just there to deal with Mortis Engines and big targets. Now, they don't have the armor piercing of the throwing axes against like Terrorgeist. Terrorgeist do have 80 or 90 armor. Yeah, it looks like 80 on this THROGG, and I think it's 80 on the other Terrorgeist as well. So pretty much standard stuff there. But the Javelins have better arcs of fire and more direct shots. So I really like these guys against Mortis Engines, Corpse Guards, you know, the big flying Vampire Beasts and Vargulfs and things like that. They're very solid. A bit of a vulnerability in the army in that your opponent can kind of compromise these guys, and it gives them a bit of a choice target in the back line. But I usually actually defend them with standard Marauders. So I don't put Spears back here. I mean, the Spears, you know, are good against Blood Knights and Black Knights and any sort of large harass. But I find that most of the time, the Vampires are just summoning zombies or sending dogs and bats. And the Marauders, the basic Marauders with the axes and shields, are going to be more efficient at killing infantry than spearmen. And also they have better, you know, melee defense, and well, not melee defense, but better kind of sustained combat stats against those type of units. So we have 2 of those bad boys. 2 familiar with great weapons. These guys are really the anchor of the build. Anti-large, armor piercing, really good at kind of monster mash and Graveguard in the front line with armor sundering too. So they have armor sundering. A lot of people don't know this who are new to the game. It does lower armor by 30, so it's going to put the Graveguard down to 30 armor and make your Berserkers and champions much stronger. But more importantly, these guys are just world beaters against big targets, against Terrorgeists, against Vargulfs, against Mortis Engines, Vampire Lords who are flying on some sort of a beast. These guys do work. So I got 2 of those bad boys, and we got THROGG. And THROGG is really good in this matchup. I think he's a better choice than Wulfric. I mean, Wulfric on a Mammoth can be quite good, and his boat attack is really good for kind of mowing down the Vampire infantry. But I like THROGG. Frostbite's really good because Vampires typically cycle charge with Terrorgeists. So having him with the anti-large, armor piercing, and Frostbite, and regeneration is so good too. And Vampires don't have any missiles to really punish him. So yeah, I think he's a really good choice. And we got a Famir Balefiend with fire, going to be imbuing fire damage with the Flaming Sword of Ruin, Burning Skull, and Fireball as well. So that's pretty much it for my force. And now for the forces of the evil cackling Vampire Counts on the far side, he's got the Dire Pack, always a good time. Going to be harassing my back line. 2 groups of Fellbats, probably to dive on my missiles and just kind of chase things off the battlefield. Front line's going to be Zombo. Secondary line is going to be Graveguard, another good choice. I mean, they do pretty well against most Norscan infantry. They'll do well against Berserkers, and against champs, it's probably a bit of a wash, I would imagine. So yeah, gives you good durability to allow your other threats to do the heavy lifting. He does also have the THROGG Vampire Lord. Now, the reason he probably picked this is because THROGG Vampire Lord does have anti-large and poison. So he's going to be good against Famir, good against THROGG, good against Feral Mammoths and regular Mammoths, all of which are fairly common here. He's got Opal Amulet. He can summon some Haggard Crypt Ghouls. He's got Doom and Darkness. That's not bad, I guess. Famir don't have good leadership, so oftentimes if you cast Doom and Darkness on them while you're alpha striking them, you can push them off. So that's a good play by my opponent there. Invocation and the Glorious Spirit Leech. So he's got a pretty good kit of spells for sure. He's got a Mortis Engine, 1 group of Blood Knights, it looks like, and that is pretty much it. Yeah, the double Terrorgeist, one of which is going to be rode by the great THROGG Vampire Lord. Let's get this show on the road, guys, and see how this battle goes. So I'm going to be squaring up to my opponent right here. He is going to be zooming in here with his Mortis Engine. Obviously, he needs to be very careful because the Javelins are pretty much, those things wreck the Mortis Engines. They get taken down incredibly quick by Javelin Focus Fire. So I'm going to be repositioning my Javelins a little bit, just trying to screen up to the advance of the Claw of Nagash. And the Vampires, you know, pretty much have the impunity. They have more mobility. I can't really catch them, so I'm at their mercy in regards to when they want to take the engagement. I mean, I could advance on the infantry and start fighting, which I will do here, but for the most part, he's going to be able to get ample positioning with the Blood Knights and some of the other troops on the flanks if he does want to. So frontline fight is about to be underway. It's very important when playing against vampire counts, at least in my opinion, if you're going to be using a javelin build to kind of stay very high and tight. I mean, there are factions like dwarves in which you can like spread out and try and, kite them about, but I think in this situation it's very good to stay in a very defensive posture. So first battle is going to be underway. Champions are going to be getting their enrage mechanic off these zombies. They're going to be beating down these undead boys pretty bad here. You can see it's going well. Zombies, of course, only cost 100 gold, so it doesn't really mean a lot. I've done like 50 gold worth of damage so far. Fellbats are going to be jumping in a little bit early on the Fellbat jump. I probably would have waited for the Mortis Engine to get a little bit closer and maybe for your other Alpha Strike, but nonetheless, look how quick they're dying. The Fellbat's going down extremely quick to the standard Marauders, much faster than Spears, so very happy about that engagement. In the meantime, I'm leaving my Marauders to kind of guard the Javelins. As they do start throwing into the Claw of Nagash, I do overextend with these Marauders a little bit, so a little bit of sloppy play, which does open up a play for my opponent, and the Dire Pack is going to be swooping in here. You can see they're going to just be going for that backline, but I do see it at the last second, and I will be taking a couple unnecessary casualties, but for the most part, I do get my shields back and the Javelins get to safety. Now the Fellbats are offline, and it looks like the Terrorgeist are going to be jumping in here, going after the Famir, trying to break these guys, and they probably will. The leadership's really low. It's at negative 25 from that rear charge. Brutal stuff, and Doom and Darkness could really help here. THROGG is going to be coming in as well. Flaming Sword of Ruin going down. Famir Balefiend also hits very hard, and this one Terrorgeist has taken a bit of a pounding, and the Javelins are also pouring some good steady fire into these guys. Blood Knights also surge in here, but I do have a group of champions to kind of pin them in place, so a lot of the Blood Knights are actually pinned in here. We don't have a good escape route. I have the Famir, I have Frostbite from THROGG, so now we have a very, very big pit fight here. So Javelin's continuing to go into the Claw of Nagash. We're getting it lower, and a Burning Skull going down, which wasn't the best cast. I don't know what happened. I could have sworn I cast it. I think I cast it over here on these guys, and it just came through and just like roasted like half my Berserkers. Thankfully, though, these are no mere Berserkers. These are the Brutes of the Hound holding here, and thankfully this battle is taking place in a place where I have unbreakable troops. But you can see here the Blood Knights are just getting crumped on. Blood Knights being crushed by the Marauder champions plus the Famir. Famir are so incredibly good against Blood Knights. Their armor makes them very tough for the Blood Knights to kill. I mean, they can do well, but Blood Knights do lack AP a little bit. So the big, heavily armored Famir are going to be super durable here. And they're also going to be clubbing on these Terrorgeists, some of these other bigger targets. So far, so good in this particular engagement. Now back to the real time here. The Terrorgeist is going to be pulling back. Invocation of Nehek going off on that guy. Strigoi Vampire Lord is also going to be getting away. So negligible damage, not negligible, but the Terrorgeist did have to pull back and heal. But a big thing for us is the fact that we were able to win this engagement and sustain. We killed off all the Blood Knights, and we were also able to bring the Claw of Nagash very low. So quite happy about that engagement right there. And you can see a Death Shriek is going to be coming down from the Terrorgeist, targeting the Famir warriors, able to kind of butter them up, and they're now wavering. Now in the back line, there are some Haggard Ghouls who've been summoned, but I am using my Marauders in defense back here, and they're very good at defending the back line. Spears would have taken exponentially longer to kill those Ghouls, so I'm very happy to have brought these guys in the back line. Strigoi Vampire Lord is going to be dropping some more Ghouls back here, and I mean, the Ghoul summon is quite, a substantial threat compared to that of the Zombie or Skeleton summon. And here we do have another fight here. You can see the Strigoi Vampire Lord is going to be jumping in, going after the Balefiend, it looks like, trying to get rid of my magic. Champions are going to be running in here to actually just basic Marauders to try and pin these guys, and it looks like we might get a pin. A nice little Spirit Leech is going to be going down on my Famir as well from the Strigoi Vampire Lord. And they're a pretty good target. They're low model count, so Spirit Leech is going to be relatively effective there, but they're still, they have 11 models left, and the other ones I think are actually broken off. So we have 4 over there. Balance of Power is pulling in my favor a little bit as the sustained infantry fighting is going in favor of Norsca, which is to be expected. The Berserkers and Champions are both very, very good at long-term combat here. You can see the Zombos are having a bit of a problem versus these elite, savage Barbarian warriors. Now, on the other side of the battlefield here, you can see that the Terrorgeist is continuing to stick in the fight, and it looks like he does get a Terror out. Now, this is a pretty good catch for him. So if the Terrorgeists are able to kind of terror out these guys and then chase all my Famir off the battlefield and then pull back for a final engagement, that could be pretty strong. Granted, THROGG is going to be healing, and it looks like the Famir are going to be piling back in. The terror out, of course, is only temporary. So when units do break from terror, they usually come back after about 4 or 5 seconds. And at this point, we are going to be piling back in, which is going to make it very, very tough for the Terrorgeist to get away. You can see there's Famir, and there's high mass units everywhere. Big Daddy THROGG is there with his club, and every hit is going to be applying Frostbite, which makes it so this big spooky Vampire Lord here is going to be incredibly slow, putting his speed down to 58, which makes THROGG almost as fast at 56 speed. So with that, that's going to be crumbling for the Vampire counts, and that is going to be all she wrote. So well played. There was certainly a fierce cockfight. Very fast, very explosive. There was a couple big cataclysmic fights that really determined the outcome of the game, but it was a fun one. I think this build is pretty strong. Champions and Marauders in the front line do a very good job against the standard Vampire front line. For the most part, unless they just go crazy in the front line, you're going to be able to win all those front line engagements. Now, the real crux and epicenter of this matchup is winning the monster mash, and it really just comes down to kind of engagements and timing and things like that. But I think the double Famir and THROGG are pretty good. Balefiend also does have armor sundering, so he makes a really good accentuation to the front line, buffing up or sundering the armor of the Graveguard, and he's just such a useful tool. And fire is very good against vampires, and viewing fire damage just gives your guys more punch against Vampire Lords, who take an extra 22% from fire damage, so it's very strong. Javelins did a good job. I think they're a good precaution against Mortis engines. If you don't bring them, it's really tough. Mortis engine will just run shop on you because, Famir have good mass and so does Throg, but chasing this while Terrorgeist are attacking you is very, very rough. So as such, I think that the Javelins are a pretty good use. Now, there are other ways to play this matchup. You can go with like Mammoth play, for example. You could bring like, Throg or, Wolfric on a Mammoth plus Soul Crusher and then just get like a bunch of infantry and just try and like bully through them. But personally, this is my style of play. Everyone plays it a little bit differently. I don't think one's better than the other. I think both of them have form and function, but in this case, I think this is going to be pretty juicy. So for my opponent's build, I definitely like seeing the Strigoi Vampire Lord. I feel like he had good application for sure. He was able to get the anti-large and had poison, and the Ghoul summon is okay. It's pretty costly in Winds of Magic, though. I don't know. If I were to bring a Strigoi Vampire Lord, I might bring a Mana Battery Necromancer just for the zombie summon. I feel like it's more cost efficient. Even though the ghouls hit harder with the new summon nerf, I just don't think they're as good. So I think just going with the Mana Battery Necromancer would be good. Zombies and Graveguard in the front line are fine, honestly. Maybe get the Sternsman in there, I think would be really nice for sustainability. Let your front line last a little bit longer. And his build was good, honestly, and I think had the capabilities of winning. I just think the fact that the Blood Knight's very expensive 1600 gold unit got trapped up and generated very little value. I think that was a big issue for sure. But the Terror guys were fine. They were able to break off my Femir several times. And the Mortis engine, yeah, he needed those like steady summons of zombies in the back to kind of shut down, so the Mortis engine could do more work for sure. But yeah, it was a good game. He played well for sure. It was a close cockfight, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this Norsca versus Vampire Count Showdown. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Take care.